Eric?
Cool. Well, all right. So I've got a question for you on the TO side of things, and this might be a little bit tougher of a question, but I think it's one a lot of people are curious about. One of the big initiatives it seems like with Valorant Esports is to really involve a lot of the third-party TOs, organizations, endemic esports talent, as the cliche name goes. And in the video, Waylon did mention that working with those people was core to creating an authentic Valorant Esports experience. So my question for you is going forward, what is the involvement going to look like between Riot and other organizations that want to make Valorant events? And the reason why this is a really important question is because if we look at First Strike, we're all very excited about it. It's going to be really fun to watch. These other organizations, third-party organizations, are going to be doing qualifiers essentially, which I would imagine involves, paying Riot a license fee and then essentially running an event that advertises for a bigger event that these TOs will not be doing, which is not really a viable broadcast plan for a company like this. So, how do you keep these third party companies involved in the scene if they won't have some of the biggest Valorant events out there? Because qualifiers aren't going to cut it. So, I'm curious about what your plan is going forward with that.
Sure.
There's a lot
I
to
think,
unpack there.
yeah. I think speaking just broadly about third parties and how we kind of think about them, um, we're excited to work with them. We think there is an ecosystem that can involve third parties, but in a controlled way where there isn't cannibalization. I don't think everything has to be totally produced by Riot. For First Strike, we are leaning into these third-party events that are qualifiers. Some of them will look like Ignition Series events where you have these, and a qualifier that's broadcast really well produced. And then First Strike is something that we wanted to lean in and show what Valorant esports can look like as a Riot produced esport as well, because we've been watching these events and thinking about how we can really make an awesome experience for our fans. I think in the future, we are thinking about how do we involve third parties in a way that's meaningful. But to be blunt as well on this, I think Riot as a company has more flexibility to invest in these events and create these big experiences for our fans, where I think some TOs are a little bit more focused on profitability and creating an event that I think is good for their business. So I think I'm excited to come through this as Riot and invest in these events in the future as well, while finding a way to include third parties in a meaningful way.
Sure, that sounds great. I think the major concern I would have with that is when you look at other games in the past, and I'm not just targeting Riot with this. A lot of developers, I think are guilty of this in the past as well. Is when you take things too fully in-house with an esport, it really prevents a lot of new faces from coming up in the scene, whether that's, to a certain extent players, but also personalities, other broadcasters, things like that.
Yeah.
So what's your plan to make sure that there's enough opportunities out there so that good talent is able to come up? Because if we look at other games, other esports, there's been a bit of a drought in terms of, new broadcast talent coming up specifically, through these more grassroots sort of events.
Yeah. So I think, working with third parties helps a lot with that, because generally they each have a different set of people they work with, and that allows different avenues for talent to come up. Something we can do as third parties have events is put more of a global spotlight on them and ensure that they get the best exposure possible. And then
promotion through the client and things like that, or
promotion, I think we saw with the Ignition Series, we had promotion through our social channels. We actually hosted these events on our main Valorant channel and rated. I think we want to continue doing that and finding other ways to promote it. Right now, esports isn't present in the client itself, but I think as we think about what that looks like in the future, we do want to make sure that our fans can experience Valorant esports in the best way possible. And if third parties are part of that, we want them to be part of the fan experience. But ultimately, from a Riot perspective, on the talent side, from a Riot side, we're also looking at everyone out there. We're not trying to just use our current Riot talent or people that are endemic. We're trying to essentially find the people that are best at Valorant, and we're always watching different events out there, whether it's qualifiers that frankly give more opportunity for newer talent to host stuff, or it's those bigger events that end up having usually the well-known names.
Okay. Do you think Riot would ever hire talent to be in-house talent like they do with League of Legends or something like that, or would you prefer to keep it more freelance and spread out?
That's a fairly technical question. I don't know the answer to, because I think there's a difference. But at the end of the day, like at a high level, Riot would want to look at having the best talent possible, hosting the biggest events.
So, and that kind of leads naturally into a question I think a lot of people would extrapolate from the other Riot esports, specifically League, and that's franchising. Is that still a question for another day? Is that still down the road? Is there movement towards that angle? And what is the current feeling internally when it comes to franchise teams?
It's something we're still exploring of figuring out what is the best system. Franchising isn't always the answer, but I think there is a need for just some sort of formal team partnerships that allows teams to invest. There's not much I can talk to because it's still things we're exploring right now. But ultimately, our major goal in the short term for 21 to have these big global competitions that allow teams to come together.